In December of 2019, a new virus from the coronavirus family was first reported in the city of Wuhan, China. The disease was later called COVID-19. The World Health Organization, also known as the WHO, characterized it as a pandemic on March 2020. Since then, countries from around the world have started a lockdown to stop the spread of the virus.
In Peru, emergency status was declared in March. Since then, we have seen the consequences of this health crisis in all aspects of our lives. So, in this video, we're going to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the environment as well as other aspects. Let's start with the positive aspects.
Climate change since the beginning of the 21st century is a serious issue involving human activity and pollution. In 2020, a global pandemic caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus has forced governments to impose restrictions and suspend activities. As a consequence, pollution got reduced and the environment went through some changes.
Here, we have a comparison of NO2 emissions in different European cities between 2018 and 2020. During March and April of 2018 in Europe, the amount of NO2 gases were extremely high, especially in Germany and Italy. The decrease of NO2 was because of the lockdown. It was only a month of self-quarantine to drop the amount of nitrogen dioxide to approximately 54% of its original from back to 2018. The COVID-19 really influenced climate change in China. The quarantine began at the end of January. Here, we can see that the amount of NO2 was still high for that month compared to February, which was already in a state of emergency. This demonstrates that the lockdown really made a huge impact on the climate.
The second good impact we recognize is the decrease of light and noise pollution. During a normal year, animals are far away from humans because of one normal reason. We produce too much noise and they get stressed. But during the lockdown, noise levels have been reduced due to the restrictions in human activities, so animals are starting to get closer to people. The lockdown has caused a decrease of noise pollution in many countries. This graphic shows the most common sources of noise pollution. Among these sources are airplanes, and due to the pandemic, they are no longer traveling through the air. Traffic in the city is also one of the most common sources of sound, and this has also been reduced.
This is a mixed result. Here is why. COVID-19 is very serious in Hong Kong, where a large amount of discarded single-use masks washed up on 100 meters towards the beach. How we can see, even though people are taking a prevention to stop the spread of the virus, this has a big impact on beaches. The use of PPE and other prevention measures caused the increase of the medical waste, which ends in both land sites and oceans. In Italy, as the number of tourists were reduced due to coronavirus, the water in Venice Canal were improved compared to the past. The residents were amazed by seeing that clean water and fishes could be seen once again in the canals. Something similar has happened in India with the Ganga River, which is one of the most popular destinations for tourists. On April 24, 2020, it was reported that the water quality has improved by 40 and 50% during the time of the lockdown. As we can see, some places the pollution have decreased the water quality, while in other ones it has been improved.
Last but not least, we have the positive impact on technology development. We can observe different initiatives countries have done with the help of digital technology to battle COVID-19. For example, we can see that China, Iceland, Singapore, and Taiwan have created artificial intelligence, digital thermometers, thermal cameras, and web-based toolkits to control the pandemic. Other countries such as the USA, Sweden, China, Taiwan, and Singapore have created migration maps and data dashboards that help track people who have or could have this virus. The advantages of this are that it allows the government to have a visual description of the spread of this virus. The disadvantages are that it fails to detect asymptomatic people, they also involve high costs and require a lot of management and many regulations.
Starting with the negative impacts is a crisis on the world economy, which is a topic I'm sure you all worried about. The impact of the pandemic has produced indirect effects in all countries and their economies. Supply volume payment chains have been broken, productivity has been paralyzed, and trade has been reduced to the essentials. 4 out of 5 companies during the quarantine had to stop producing or reducing their operations, thus firing employees. Here we look at the cases of the US and Spain. This is a graphic of US economy. We see that its GDP, that is the total value of goods and services produced in a country, has remained stable over the years, until 2008, when there was a terrible financial crisis. But if we continue a little more, we get to witness how is 2020, which could be said to be the strongest crisis that the US had so far. And we can prove it with the data shown above the graph, which shows us the variation of the annual change. As you can see, a minus 5.9%. Also, if we take a look at the data below, we can see how much GDP the USA will have at the end of the year, minus 8%. On the other hand, if we take a look at the economy in Spain, we could say that it is much worse. Its annual percentage in GDP is minus 8%, while inflation, which is not much of a problem, is minus 0.3%. So it is projected that at the end of the year, there is minus 12.8% in GDP. We can conclude that the economic situation of the United States and Spain depends on controlling the health crisis and contagion rates for the reopening of markets and therefore reactivating productivity by improving GDP levels and controlling inflation.
The second negative impact identified is land pollution. During this quarantine, in many countries, the level of garbage has increased by a large percentage. Keeping this in mind, we can say that what happened helped to increase land pollution. The Chinese city, which has been the epicenter of the pandemic and which is home to over 11 million of people, is reported to have generated 200 tons of clinical garbage on a single day, 4 times the amount the city's only dedicated facilities can incinerate per day. In Germany, various measures were taken in order to dispose the garbage in times of COVID-19. People who have tested positive for this virus have a different method of disposing of their garbage. The Federal Ministry of the Environment has asked households with people who have tested positive for COVID-19 to dispose all of their waste through the residual waste collection stream. However, some municipalities have stopped collecting the garbage due to the lack of personnel. In Argentina, a similar system is being applied.
The third negative impact we want to talk about is related to recycling. There has been a noticeable decrease in recycling since the COVID-19 confinement took place. Not only has the amount of waste increased, but it has also experienced some changes in its composition. Sadly, the closure of almost every recycling center has led to a 300% increase in reported fly tipping in rural communities. What is worse is that it is in these poor communities in which diseases caused by mismanaged waste are more frequent. On the other hand, in some European countries such as France, Spain, Italy, England, and Ireland, some sanitary processes to manage the waste have been developed, and they have continued with their recycling activities with normality on the most part. There are also 6 aspects that we should take into consideration. First of all, the low level of awareness that people have towards waste management. Secondly, increased littering, illegal dumping, and open burning. Recycling can be challenging to follow up in the best of times, and clearly these aren't. Thirdly, the suspension of recycling activities during isolation. Fourthly, the increased amount of mixed waste due to low levels of segregation, which will also include infectious waste. Fifthly, the improper healthcare waste management treatment in place. And finally, in the 6th place, the reuse of disposed PPE.
The final impact presented are the difficulties in conservation. Many of the threats facing biodiversity and protected areas may have been exacerbated during and following the COVID-19 outbreak. Protected and conserved areas are key to maintaining healthy ecosystems, protecting diverse natural habitats and wild species. During this pandemic, they are facing critical problems without a treason, which means no incomes. Pandemics challenge many aspects of human society, including resources and waste management. People and communities living around and near protected and conserved natural areas are vulnerable to the pandemic. But not only humans are being affected, also the ecology. Zoonotic diseases have devastating impacts on wildlife populations. Many animals, such as gorillas or chimpanzees, can be infected by respiratory viruses.
We can conclude that there have been both good and negative impacts. A positive impact is that the emissions of NO2 gas have decreased, which has delayed climate change, a similar scenario with light and noise pollution. And the reason is that the everyday human activities have stopped during the lockdown, which in a way has given breathing space to the earth.
Another great aspect is initiative to develop technology to help in this crisis.
On the other hand, recycling and conservation activities have stopped due to effort to preserve nature are left aside.
Economy is being affected in every country, and it appears to bring difficulties for our lifestyle in years to come.
We want to end this video saying that we believe this is the time to rethink what's truly important. Keep good habits along with better options for the common good.